Hey, we overcoming adversity, doing it at all costs, making wins at all loss. Yeah, the world is all lost, yeah. Ain't no turning back, we headed straight for the stars, yeah. Oh yeah, we overcoming adversity, doing it at all costs, making wins at all loss. Yeah, the world is all lost, yeah. Ain't no turning back, we headed straight for the stars, yeah. Oh yeah.
The podcast where we go real deep into some tough conversations, some real life stories about challenges and obstacles we face. That leads to transformational growth mindset and being resilient. It's all about breaking the bottle with all of the things that we do hold within. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Michael Allison, and today we have my really good friend, my accountability partner, Miss Dr. Reggie. Before we get started, let me tell you a little about Dr. Reggie. She holds a doctorate of education and organization leadership and a specialization in conflict analysis and resolution. She holds a master's in science of administration and management. She has a bachelor's in science and legal studies, a certification in plant-based science and nutrition. She's the founder of Fusion Consulting and Fancy Vegan. And hold up, y'all. Her latest endeavor, she's yielded over $20 million in government contracts for her clients. You can also follow her on social media at I am Dr. Reggie. Let's welcome to the show my good friend, Dr. Reggie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. Hello, beautiful people. I'm just honored to be here with my good buddy, accountability partner, just across the board, just being able to support you in this monumental undertaking that you've actually embarked upon to help people to understand what it means to overcome adversity, how the impact that they've had in their lives to be able to inspire and, as your motto said, to empower those around you. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to I guess I'm a little nervous today. I don't know, because you know a little too much, but we'll see.
Hey man, I am excited to have you on. You know, like we're accountability partners, so we meet like every week, and we usually go for like 2 hours, 3 hours. You know what I'm saying? So like for this podcast, I don't know how far we're gonna go, but I know it's gonna be good. I know that you're full with a wealth of knowledge, tons of experience, and I that's what I truly admire about you. Ever since we met a couple months ago, we just kicked it off because our experience blended and gelled so well. Um, so you have a tremendous amount of experience, and like I said, I truly admire that. But I know that you got started somewhere. So if you could, please tell me your journey of how you got to where you're at now today.
Wow, how did I get to where I am today? I am the daughter of a serial entrepreneur. My mom, one of the most phenomenal, strongest, hilarious, unapologetic women I've ever met in my entire life. She's one of the most impactful that I've ever met in my entire life. And as a young child, I was always her right-hand person. So I was the only girl for quite some time. So wherever she went, she took me with her. And so I was a part of seeing her in her business transactions and just having an impact in the community in so many different ways. So it's something that was just ingrained in me. So that's how I got started into the space of being this little leader at a very young age and learning to understand what it is to embrace people, all walks of life, and to respect and treat everyone with dignity, regardless as to what their station in life may be. And those are some true lessons that my mom taught me at a very young age. So that's how I came to be in terms of just how all of those lessons have actually impacted me molded me into the person, the woman that I am today.
Nice. So if you could tell me what area, what town that your family grew up in and you grew up in. And then I would like for you to touch on some of the lessons that you mentioned that your mom has actually taught you.
Oh, great. My mom and dad, they're from Haiti.
hmm
And my mom left Haiti when she was very young, and she wanted a better life for us. So she actually came to the United States. I actually came here when I was I was a toddler, maybe like a year and a half. So this is what I know. And I love to say that I have the best of all worlds. I am a Haitian American, and I say that proudly. And just a walking melting pot, so to speak. And so yeah, so that was the journey in terms of how we were able to come here, and how I've been able to embrace all of the opportunities and beautiful culture that that I've come to actually be a part of and being here.
So, tell me a little about your dad too, as well.
My dad is I don't know how deep you want to go. I was blessed to have two phenomenal men in my life.
Hmm.
My bonus dad, he raised me from the time I was, a toddler, because my mom and my mom married at a very young age. And my bonus dad was one of the most phenomenal men that I've ever known. And in his eyes, I could do no wrong. Maybe that's why I'm a little spoiled. And my other dad, which is my biological dad, he's him and I, we had an interesting journey in terms of how we were able to um, kind of just build our relationship, and to a point now that I consider him to be one of my best friends. And so I've always been blessed. I've always said that I come from a blended family, and just a beautiful merger of just a wonderful bonus dad, a great father, and I have a great bonus mom. And to even call her stepmom or stepdad, it just does them absolutely no justice. So yes. So my dad lives in Canada. My bonus father passed away quite a few years ago, and my biological father lives in Montreal. And so that's my buddy. So we can actually have like good conversations and just kick it up, and cool guy.
Nice. If you could tell me, like, how did that dynamic impacted your life today? Having bonus dads, a dad, a mom, and all that. So tell me a little about how that impacted you.
The way it impacted my life is that oftentimes in life we strive and we struggle to find a place to belong. We long and we yearn for unconditional love. And so many times the things, the choices that we make, they're actually based on the love or lack thereof that we go out into the world with. And having a blended family has really put me in a place where I've been rooted in unconditional love from day one. So I
Mm,
know what it is to be loved unconditionally.
mm.
So not necessarily going out there and seeking the approval of anyone. And so it allowed me to step into the world in a very confident way, and knowing that there was nothing that I could ever do that would, where their love would waver for me. And I am the rock star aunt. I'm the rock star aunt. I have a beautiful, wonderful bonus daughter as well. And one of the key things that I always make sure that they know, I always tell them there's nothing that you can do that will ever make me stop loving you. If it's something great, we'll celebrate it. And if it's something challenging and the decision wasn't so favorable, then we'll just figure it out. So I think it's really important that as individuals that we know that we have that unconditional love, and that allows us to step into the world in a much more present, more confident way, and not necessarily falling prey to some of the influences that are out there. So having a blended family has most definitely allowed me to not only understand the beauty of unconditional love, but also to give it so freely to those that are around me as well.
I think that's an excellent point. You know that kids that grew up in a blended family could easily feel shunned out and all these other things and stuff like that. So I love the fact that you grew up in a loving home, and it seemed like it was a very wholesome relationship for you. If you could tell me about the love of your mom.
My mom. And just to kind of reverse just a bit in terms of the blended family, and just understanding
Hmm.
that, of course, your big dysfunctional family, we, have our, our fair challenges, but just knowing that when all is said and done, it's still rooted in that place of love. And then
Hmm.
to kind of fast forward to the question in terms of the love of my mom. My mom, my buddy, my friend, she was a great person. She passed away out this year, make 7 years,
Wow.
and she was. It seemed like it was just yes. She was just a great woman. She actually shouldered the responsibility of caring for her entire family, and the family that we had overseas and the families that she had here. And my mom never met a stranger. And so we always had extended family members as well. And she was just this person that was just fearless. She was fearless. She was unapologetic. If she wanted it, she went for it. And one of the key things is that she impacted so many lives that her lending program when I was a little kid. And what she would do is she would buy so many different wholesale products, and she would take them into the community where single moms or single dads were raising their kids. And what she would do is help them so that they could generate income in their families so that they can take care of their families. And her only ask was for them to pay it forward. She never wanted any of the proceeds, and she always wanted them to pay it forward. And what was pretty interesting is that when we had her going away service, it was just a really proud moment to see so many people that she had impacted that stood, and they were just, sharing the impact that she had in their lives. Those that are professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, pilots, that started their own businesses, nonprofit organizations. And to see that this one woman led a charge that impacted, I would say, thousands of people. And so it makes me very proud to be her daughter and to see where, just her blood runs through my veins. And I'm just really excited to know that that's who she was. And a lot of times with our parents, we love them. And sometimes we kind of take them for granted because they're ours, right? And in her absence, it's just made me realize, it just magnified how much of a giant she was and how she really and truly made her mark in this world. And it makes me very proud. So that's my
I
mom.
love that story, man. She was a true pioneer, created a legendary legacy for you, and I absolutely wish I would have met her. Always look up to like role models and people that have paved the way for us and things like that. It seems like she's done an extraordinary job for you doing that.
And it's interesting. My mom was such a firecracker.
Hmm.
The running joke was like, she would always tell me, "You're not the boss of me. You're not my mom," because I was more of the calm, reserved one. And my mom would be the one that would run into the room, and she's like, "Yo, let's dance. Let's have fun." And no, she would be the one that would, funny, craziest story. You won't believe me. My mom actually hung out with Lil Wayne and the Wyclefs of the world. And she's like in the middle of them dancing. I'm like, and I'm on the sideline like, "Mom, really? Could you please just chill?" And no, seriously. And it's interesting. I remember one of my graduations, my mom's out there and, super quiet. And of course, who's raising the roof? My mom. She's literally screaming like, "Mommy, could you like be quiet?" But that was her. She was the life of the party. Throughout the span of her life, she made a lot of great connections and met a lot of people. And she was able to have, those that dignitaries and heads of states, and those that were just people that were just from around the way. And she always made it very clear to us, you treat everyone with respect and
Mm.
dignity. And she said, "I don't care what their station in life is." And she was this big chef, right? She loved to cook. So when she would cook for everyone in the neighborhood. And she had this thing where you never deny a person food. So you always offer, because you never know what's going on in their home. So when they're there, you give them. So she was generous to a fault. And so, yeah, that was my mom, the firecrackers. I'm the calm one. She was the hot, fiery one. And it's interesting that in her absence, in her death, it's like now I find myself being just as much of a firecracker as she was, but also learning to use my voice in a way that's
Mm.
far more fearless than I had ever done before. So yeah.
It was just a matter of time for that firecracker to come out.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I want to know. You said your mom was a chef and she was cooking up a whole bunch of stuff. I know we're gonna get into the vegan topic a little bit later, but I do want to know: did she pass on any family recipe to you or anything like that?
My mom was one of those people, you know how they I saw it somewhere online once. It said the thing with our community is that we really don't use recipes. And because it's like we sprinkle the seasoning until the ancestors kind of tell us to stop. That was my mom. She would just like, I mean, it's the craziest thing, right? And when you go to going away services, you see and hear some of the most interesting things, right? While we were it's kind of crazy to say this. At her funeral, there was literally someone that was screaming and crying, like, "Who's gonna cook for me now? She's gone." She's like, "Oh my God, who's gonna cook for me now?" And it was in that moment, it was, it was very interesting because I stood there and it's like all I could do was kind of just chuckle
Mhm.
because the conservative side of me would have been like, chill. But my mom probably like, yeah, you go ahead and say that's right. You let them know what they're gonna miss. Kind of. So I actually chuckled at you know, her going away service. So yeah. So I mean,
So
I would say that I am a mini chef from my mom because at a very young age, whenever she was cooking, I would be there helping her with preparing stuff and
sous chef.
the spices and the sous chef. And what do you call it? In Haiti, we have, I think they call it the mortar and like the pistol. It's like the brown wooded piece where you put the spices. And so my mom made her spices fresh, right? So she
Wow.
would get the garlic and everything and all the herbs and everything. And my job was I would sit in there, as you say, as her sous chef, and I would wait until she had them all together. And my job was to make sure that I kind of muddled it really good, really, really well. And that's what we would use for this. So that was my job as young as like 4 years old. So I could definitely say, although I am plant-based, whatever it is whatever your fancy is, whatever meal you want, I could definitely put a good spin on it that you would definitely be amazed. So yeah.
Nice. I love it. I love it. You and your mom had a tremendous relationship. I could tell. I could truly tell that. How did she give you the name Reggie?
How did my mommy call me Reggie? I feel like a little girl calling her mommy. Um, it's actually it was a story of pain, hurt, and just wanting and praying for God to kind of bargain with her. And what do I
Mhm.
mean by that? My mom, like I mentioned before, at a very young age, she left Haiti. She lived in the Dominican Republic for some time. And I had a sister. Her name was Soledad. And when my mom moved away, my sister lived with my grandmother and my aunt and my uncle in Haiti. And my mom, she was a big dreamer. Like she was always interpreting dreams. If my mom had a bad dream, don't you dare leave. You can't leave the house tonight. "Mom, I gotta go to work. I have to go." No, trust me, you can't go. It's like one of those types. I don't know if it's a Haitian thing, an Islander thing, but those dreams were massive. So my mom was away and she had a dream that my sister had died.
Mm.
So she sent a letter to my grandmother and she, pretty much, telling her, hey, I had a dream that Soledad died. Is it true? And she said, if it is, it's okay. You can tell me. I'll be okay. And my grandmother said, no, no, she's fine. She's fine. But the dream that my mom had was indeed the day that my sister had passed away. She
Wow.
passed away of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome.
Mhm.
And what ended up happening was my mom, years later, she ended up having my two brothers. And then she ended up, being pregnant with me. And when she found out that she was having a daughter, my mom was terrified. She was terrified in the sense that, you know, she had my two brothers and they were fine and they lived. And she kept thinking, what could she have done differently so that my sister could live? And so when she realized that she was having a girl, she started bargaining with God. God, you allowed my two sons to live. I'm begging you to please allow my daughter to live. And so she thought about it, and the only commonality was that my brothers were boys. And she figured just maybe, if I give my daughter a male name, that God would allow her to live.
Mhm.
And so, out of fear, desperation, and just wanting to give me a fighting chance in this life, my mom decided to call me Reggie.
Wow.
And it's interesting. Reggie is, most people typically think that it's short for Regina or Reginald, but Reggie being short for Reginald actually stands for warrior. It stands for advisor. It stands for counsel. It's one of those powerful names in leadership. The short version of Reginald. And so it's interesting because when I reflect on my life, I realized that I had always been a natural born leader, even in instances where I didn't want to be a leader. I've always been in that role and been that advisor and been that resilient warrior throughout my life. So I wouldn't say that it's a coincidence. My mom was onto something, but that's the story of my life. That's the story of my name and how it came to be. A mom that was hurt, broken, desperate from the loss of a daughter, from one child, and just begging that God, just maybe my daughter would have a fighting chance if I gave her a boy's name. And it's Reggie. And I actually love it. It was between that or Sabrina. No disrespect to the Sabrinas out there, but
Yeah, Sabrina's too common.
yeah,
I think it was pretty obviously the story is inspirational based off how you explained it. But I think the name is unique in itself as why I asked you the question. And I think it's always, like I said to you before, it's always a good talking point because I was curious in regards to like it's not standard, so to speak. I know that like you've experienced the loss of your mom, and I could only imagine what that was like for you. So, if you would, how did you and your siblings cope with that, the loss of your mom?
hmm. um, it's still a process. You know, it's still a process. I um I try not to revisit that day. And she was in the hospital for observation, and I I'm quite intuitive. And I just remember when I wanted to, it was in the middle of the night. My siblings and I were taking shifts, and I was
Hmm.
with her all day. Then my brother was taking the night shift, and I don't know. So I was my dreams are typically pretty vivid, and it's crazy. Some of my friends think I'm clairvoyant. I'll come up with something. They're like, "How do you know that?" And then it happens. They're like, "Well, damn, you said that." So it was in the middle of the night. I just woke up. It must have been like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay, I need to go to the hospital right now. And I called my brother. He was like, he said, no, I'll stay until the morning. I said, no, no, no. I have to be there now. And when I went there, that was the last time I would see my mom.
Hmm.
And what was interesting because, which I remember that day, my mom was, she being a firecracker, giving the, giving the hospital staff a run for their money. And she had her little, I guess I'm going to tell her business child. She can't beat me now since she's gone. She had her little whiskers. She had her little whiskers. And so I was there and I was like, I'm like, Mommy, let me kind of clean up your face. And so I was kind of like plucking her little whiskers and whatever the case was.
Hmm.
And she's looking at me. And she would always tell me, she's like, you're so strong, but you're so weak for me. And so as I was standing over her face, I just remember her looking at me in like this look of admiration, not knowing that that would be my last day seeing my mom.
Hmm.
And she looked at me. She was like, "You're so weak for me." She said, "You love me so much, but she said I need you to be strong." She said, because whenever something was going on with her, I was like, "Mommy," I would always kind of just, get into overprotective mode. And so on that day, so I'm sitting there, I'm standing over her, and because I made it a point when my mom was here, I would always take her flowers, and I would always buy nice things for her just because. And she would say, "Why did you buy this for me?" And I would say to her, "Just because I love you." And so I would take her flowers all the time. And it was always one of those things like, "Why did you bring me flowers?" "Just because I love you." And she would call, and she would literally call like the whole family. "Guess what my doctor bought me today? She bought me flowers again." But my mom and I, it was an interesting relationship because I would always tell her what to do. She didn't want to listen to me. So it was like always like a mother daughter kind of like battle. And so that day she ended up, they had to rush her to. This is the first time I'm actually talking about this out loud. So, okay, so they ended up, while I was there, I just noticed some things weren't right. They rushed her to ICU, and while I was waiting, I get this. They rushed in and told me I needed to come back there, and that's when she ended up coding.
Hmm.
And what was pretty interesting is that in the midst of it all, it's like everything was just moving in slow motion. Everything was just moving in slow motion, and when I actually just was standing there witnessing what was going on. And out of nowhere, I just started giving her CPR myself. I just started trying to revive her myself. And I just couldn't do enough. And so, yeah, so that was, of course, a major turning point in my life. And it's interesting, going back to the story of my sister, my mom passed away September 11th. My sister was born on September 11th.
Wow.
So My mom passed away when it was September 11th. My mom was 67. My sister was born September 11th, 1967. So what it means, I have no idea. But yeah, so going to the question in terms of what it's meant for my family, I've always been the go-to for everyone. And so I instantly became the matriarch of the family,
Mm-hmm.
which is which has been a pretty heavy responsibility to carry,
I imagine.
and just realize that having to, just because that was an automatic switch, but still realizing that I still have to establish healthy boundaries in my life. And although my family view me in a particular role, that it doesn't mean that that I'm only defined by that role. So that's been, a navigating point for us in my family. And we have a very close-knit family. And so my siblings and I, we drive each other crazy. But at a very young age, my mom always taught us that we were each other's keeper. So there was no division. So there wasn't, it pains me. It breaks my heart when I see families in peril, when I see families that are, going at it. It makes me very sad. And so we did what we were taught to do. We just stepped in and we were there for each other and just continued to love and support one another and take care of each other like my mom would have wanted us to. So it's brought us closer together. We were close before, and it's just pretty much just put us in a position in knowing that, because the thing about life, our parents teach us so much in terms of how to, they teach us how to navigate life, right?
All
And
right.
I heard some time ago, which I truly believe, is that we see the world through the eyes of our mother, but we learn to survive from our father,
Mm.
right? We learn those survival strategies, right? And so they teach us these things throughout our life. That's why they're here. But one of the things they never teach us is how do we live without them.
Right.
And so that became one of the challenges. And what I did was, and I'm one of those people, I don't like to rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just move forward, start the healing process. And what I did in terms of for my healing process, the day after her funeral, I made it a point. Every week I would take my mom something nice, flowers, whatever, when she was here. So I had to put in my mind that I was still having a date with my mom, but our date was just in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was interesting, my grandmother passed away 30 plus years ago. And at the burial site where my grandmother is, my mom had a tree planted. There was a seed that was planted. Okay. And now there's this big, massive tree. My
Mm.
grandmother has a bench. So I would go there and sit on my grandmother's bench, right? And now my mom has a bench, and it's all under this big, massive tree. So when I'm there, I'm
Beautiful.
sitting under the tree. And so here it is. It's like the tree of life, right? The circle of life. So immediately after, the very next day after her funeral, every week I would still go. I was like, I would go and I would, because the thing about losing a parent, at random moments, you're overwhelmed with grief and you just never know when it's going to happen.
Right.
But you have to find a way to kind of navigate through this life. And I just remembered every week I would go. I'd be in tears, and it's like, and the thing that brought me the greatest peace is I would read scripture. So when I was there, I would just open, as I'm sitting on her bench, all I could do is just like, well, the bench wasn't there the very next day, but I would feel my grandmother's right next to her. And all I could do is just go into my phone. I have the Bible app, and all I could do is just find a scripture. And I would just read the scripture until I would stop crying. And so I did that for a year. And there were times I would go there and I would just write. So I have some great poems that I've written there, some great pieces that I've written in terms of, it was cathartic for me going through that grief process. And grief is something it's a constant, right? You go through different evolutions of grief, but that pain is still there. You just learn how to deal with it a little better than before. And it wasn't until it was interesting, I stopped wearing mascara because I never knew when I would cry, right? And so, and it got to the point, months went by, a whole year went by, And I remember one day I went to see my mom and I'm sitting there with her flowers. And I was like, oh, I'm not crying today.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was the most remarkable thing because I was like, I'm getting better, and so that was
You're just
that
going through that
process of
healing
just,
process.
I was going through the healing process. And so I was like, wait, it was like, of course, I'm kind of cheesy. You've been around me enough. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not crying today. And then I went the next week and it was a year later. I'm okay. And the thing is this, your life will never be the same when you lose a parent or when you lose both of your parents. I always kind of liken it to, you see color in very vivid, in like a very vivid way, right? You see the vivid red, the vivid blues, the vivid yellows, and it's just so beautiful and vibrant. But after losing my mom, I know that I'll never see the vibrance and the colors that I once did. So now I still see color, although not as vibrant, but I can deal with the shades that I do see now because I know in everything that I do, I'm honoring her, I'm living out her purpose, and I know she's proud of me. So long and short of it, that's the true story. And if I could think of being in the face of adversity and losing a mom, losing a parent, I'd lost my bonus dad a few years prior, and just realizing that life will happen. Pain is inevitable. Loss is inevitable. And what's key is how do you find a way to fight your way back to the land of the living? Because you get to a point where you're on autopilot because you're just coasting through. If I did all of this for my mom, like who am I living for now? But my faith, okay? My faith and having hope and knowing that there's a greater purpose and calling for my life and that my mom was so proud of me and she'll continue to be proud of me.
Right.
And I just kind of, so I in that process, I've learned what it was to face adversity, learning what it was to give time. The paradox of time is something that is so critical, so essential when you're going through grief, when you're dealing with loss, because we want to rush through the process. We want to get over it. We want to go
Mm-hmm.
under it. And I remember my mom, I was always that person that was always attending somebody's funeral. If it was your cousin, your uncle, or your cousin twice removed, and a friend, if it mattered to you, it mattered to me. And I would show up. My mom was like, girl, you're not tired of going to funerals? My mom was like, why are you always going? I said, Mommy, I'm just going to show support. Right. And so here it is in her death. What I realized was I started calling my friends that had lost parents. And see, I'm just that, I need to know that blueprint knowledge-based person. Like, okay, what's the blueprint? What plan I'm going to put together to get through this grief thing and how I'm going to go over it, under it. It's going to be, and every person that I called, I just wanted them to give me a time factor. I just wanted them to say, Reggie, you're going to hurt today. And by next week or whatever the time is, you're going to be okay. I desperately needed that.
But it's
I
on
kept
your
calling
terms,
my
though.
friends and they on my terms, right?
It's on your
And
terms.
I kept hearing on my terms. And I kept hearing the same thing. You'll never get over it. You'll never get over it. And so in that process, what I learned, if I can impart anyone that's listening today that may be going through grief, that's suffering loss, or, whatever it may be in your life, I had to understand the importance of time. I had to give time. I couldn't go through it. I couldn't go under it. I couldn't go around it. I had to give time to allow my little broken heart to heal. And to speak about my heart, I'm going to kind of cap it in a second. After my mom passed away, this is the craziest thing. You know how Sanford and Son, when he was like, oh my gosh, Elizabeth, it's the big one, it's the big one. Remember that? After my mom, everything happened, my chest would always hurt. When I would get upset, when I would think, I was always having these chest pains. And so my mom passed away of an unexpected heart attack. We didn't know that she had any kind of cardiovascular challenges or issues. And I kept going so I went to see my doctor. My primary sent me to a specialist. So then they started making me wear like this heart monitor. They're running all these tests and trying to figure out. Now, because it's a family history, my heart was always hurting. My chest was hurting. Anything would happen. And guess what the final result was?
What was it?
I was dealing with a broken heart. So anatomically, there was nothing wrong with my heart. My heart was just broken. And so After so many co-pays later.
You know, I think that is kind of neat how you've been through that transition though. Like you've experienced the death of your mom. You said you've experienced the death of your bonus dad, and on your time, on your terms, you came to it and came through that. I would like for you to expound a little bit on what was that like, because not one parent but two parents was taken away from you.
It was, you know what was really, it was one of the, now I could realize one of the darkest points of my life, because my bonus dad passed away a few years prior. My mom passed away. Then a good friend of mine passed away. Then my cousin passed away. And not to mention my uncle years prior.
Back to back to back to
And
back.
what they were at different points. Well, my uncle and my bonus dad passed away previously, but my
Hmm.
mom, my friend, and my cousin, and what I realized in all 5 of those scenarios, I was always there when they transitioned. And so I've witnessed death far more than I would like to share.
So, like close up,
And
you were there in the building, in the room, at their
in the room making
bedside.
at
Wow,
the bedside making
wow,
decisions,
wow.
you know. So it was so just having to learn, being such an empath and having to learn not to internalize and take on all of the heaviness that came along with that. And so I'm really big on self-reflection.
Hmm.
I'm really big on understanding whenever I find myself in a certain space or just feeling ranges of emotions, I always sit in the moment and try to identify, why am I feeling this way and what could I have done differently and how do I move forward.
Hmm.
And so when my when my bonus dad passed away, I had to make the decision to take him off of life support.
Wow.
And in every I've had heavy decisions to make throughout my life. And I just remember praying. Again, the family, we would all be together and everyone's looking to me to make decisions. And I would have to always have that brave, strong face, although I was dying inside and realizing that everything was looking pretty grim. But having to have that warrior-like stance and just guiding everyone through, because they looked to me for guidance and hope. And I just remembered every day I would have the brave face, and I would come home every night and I would just pray. And when we're singing, when we're praying the Lord's Prayer,
Yes.
um, and we ask that God's will be done, it was a test of my faith in that I would pray it, but didn't really want the outcome. So I was praying
Hmm.
that God will allow your will to be done. But what happens when your will isn't aligned with God's will?
I'll tell you something. I'm leading a men's group at my church, and the topic last week was about surrendering all to God, and are we truly, truly surrendering things to God? And that's what that sounded
And
like.
that was the thing. So I would get on I'm like praying. I'm like, God, come on now, God, you gotta let him live. Like, yo, you got to, come on. And it was he was one of my best buddies. One of my best friends. Oh my bonus dad, let me tell you, I can have some conversations with that guy. And my mom, can I tell you a quick story?
Sure, go
You want to
ahead.
hear a quick story?
Go ahead.
I remember when I first started dating, and my mom was like, "Oh Lord, Haitian culture, girls don't date. You only," which I always find kind of interesting. They only want you to get married, but you have to date in order to get to that point, right?
Correct.
Anyway, I went to school. I was in college. I come home. My dad's there. His car's parked in front of the house, and my mom's there. And I'm thinking, because whenever my bonus dad would trip, I'm like, "Oh, ching ching ching, I'm getting some money." So I get home, and my mom's standing there, and my dad, he has this look on his face, and I'm like, "What's going on?" My mom's looking at my mom like, "Tell her, tell her." And I'm standing like, oh, "Okay, what is my mom up to now?" So My mom ended up telling my dad. So the plan was, it was an intervention so that I can stop dating. My mom didn't want me dating.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Grown woman in college. Okay. First year of college. And so my mom had my dad, because he was in Miami. She had him drive down from Miami. No, you need to talk to her. So we're standing outside and my mom was like, tell her. And so my dad, my bonus dad is looking at me. And mind you, they're both Haitian, right? So English is their second language. And my mom was like, she spoke like four languages, but that's a sidebar. But my dad stood there. And so my mom was like, tell her. Oh my gosh, I lost, she's like, now she's dating. Her life is over. My mom was so melodramatic. Oh my gosh, you got to stop dating. And I don't want this. And my dad looks at me and my mom almost had a connection. He said, baby, when you're dating, just make sure you use condo. I'm standing there and I'm like, God. And my mom was like freaking, and now she's pissed at him. And he's just standing there. And I'm like, did I just hear condo? Or was he trying to say condom? And then they just start yelling at each other. And I just politely just kind of exited my way into the house. But it was just crazy.
That sounds like a dad, man. Hey, so
like,
go ahead.
No, so that. So then he was like, baby, let's go for a ride. So we just went for a ride. And he said, listen, your mom's thinking one way. I know how the world is. You're going to do what it is you want. I just want you to always be responsible. From the time I was a little kid, he always told me, if you put your drink down, you never pick it up. Okay. So this was just another one of those conversations, but this time around, it was just, if you're going to do something, which I'm realistic, but at that time I was still, I was just as, which I still am. And so he was like, listen, he said, just make sure that you're using condos. And he said, as a matter of fact, I said, Pops, no, just something about this doesn't seem right. I don't need it. I got what you said. We're good. So that was that.
I think it's cool though, man. Your dad kept it 100. He kept it a buck with you and just gave you the real, like no sugarcoating, none of that whatever stuff they used to talk about, birds and the bees and all that nonsense and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So I like that. I want to get into this. You shared so much. Your mom, your dad, tons of grief that you've experienced. And at a particular point, I know that you was also searching for your peace too, as well, with dealing with all of that. That seemed like it affected your personal life, but as you transition into like your professional life and your professional career leading up to that journey, how did that impact that transition for you?
The way it impacted me, I would say across the board, is to always be resilient
Hmm.
and to always find a way to honor the voice that I hear within and to get to a place where I have to learn to be true to me. What doesn't feel right, because, oftentimes we know where we shouldn't be. We know those things in our
Sure enough.
lives that don't align with our purpose and our destiny.
True.
Okay. But oftentimes we force ourselves to stay in situations because we become uncomfortable or comfortable in uncomfortable positions,
Right.
in places, spaces. And a great deal of times we're afraid of change. Sometimes it's better to stay with the dysfunctional or uncomfortable known as opposed to chartering new territory into an unknown space. And so what I've learned is that regardless as to what's going on around me, regardless as to what adds up in front of me, if internally it doesn't feel right, I have to make a change. I have to make sure that I'm doing what's in my best interest. And what I've learned to do, I'm very self-aware and I'm self-reflective. I'm really big on that because I want to be the best version of me that I can possibly be. I don't always get it right. I'm just an imperfect, human being, kind of just navigating through this world, just trying to having an impact and hoping that my presence in someone's life or my presence in someone's space is much greater for them in a positive way than when I leave, than when I first entered the place. And so it allowed me to realize that regardless as to what I'm dealing with, regardless of how scary it may appear, that I
Hmm.
have to take a deep breath and make those decisions. And sometimes it means taking that big leap of faith and worrying about what forgetting about what's in the past and figuring out how am I going to move forward ahead. So I think throughout my professional career, my journey, it allowed me to identify those moments and those times in my life professionally where I know that there was something more for me, not necessarily knowing what that was, but knowing that I had to go out and find it. And so that was the key thing, because a lot of times we get to the space that we focus so much on self-esteem that a lot of times I don't believe that there's a great deal of emphasis placed on professional esteem.
Mhm.
As a society, we equate who we are with what we do. What happens when you're in a career where you're no longer gratified or you're not happy? If you equate that with who you are and if you equate who you are with what you do, if you're not happy, what impact is that having on you as a person, as a human being? And do you sit and lament in it, or do you decide that it's time to move forward and make a decision? So it's taught me to, in those moments, if it's not aligned, it doesn't feel right, it's okay to take a deep breath, whether you fall. And I don't like to say fail, because there's an opportunity for growth and learning in every situation. It doesn't always
Absolutely.
go favorable, right? And so it's just taught me to just move forward and take risk, and being able to deal with the outcome. And if I fall, guess what? I'm going to get back up. I'm going to figure it out. So,
Absolutely. I love that you stuck to that in regards to like your alignment. If there's a disconnect there, that you chose to bet on yourself. Um, a lot of us sometimes will stick into situations because we're comfortable. It's bringing in the paycheck. This is where, you know what I'm saying, this is a situation that will get me by and get me through, and not truly being resilient and actually betting on ourselves. I love the fact that you committed to that. I wanted to for you to speak to, if you would, a bit briefly about like your transition into higher education. I know that we have listeners that of that ilk. So if you could tell me about like your transition in regards to like your PhD, your master's, your bachelor's, and any challenges that you may have faced going through that process.
oh wow, I initially I was a pre-med major. I was going to be a pediatrician. And I know I love the kiddies. I love them dearly. When I was in college, we had this one professor that you couldn't get through the pre-med, prerequisites without going through him. And he was known to fail students multiple times. Okay. And so it was just one of those things. I was in his course and I just realized that, but it was interesting. I was always told that I should have been an attorney. So, debating and all that other good stuff. And I just remember I switched my major to pre-law. And so the goal actually was to go to law school.
Wow.
And that was my track. And I would always debate. I've been into politics, which is sad. I've been into politics since I was like a little kid. I would have like debates with my dad, and he would just like literally like, well thought out, planned out debate type things. And my dad would always encourage that. And what ended up happening was my first year of college, my mom always instilled in all of us to make sure that we, you know, be mindful of our future and to always invest in assets that will help us to kind of
Mhm.
down the line. In my first year in college, I actually purchased my first home. And what ended up happening, my second year. And when I was applying for looking at law schools, they didn't want you to work the first year. I wasn't independently wealthy. That was a luxury I couldn't afford. And I always promised myself that if I didn't go to law school, that I would always get my doctoral degree,
Mhm.
which is what I ended up doing. So that's why you'll see that my bachelor's degree is in legal studies. So everything under the sun: sports law, criminal law, civil law, international law. It's interesting. I'm actually a family mediator as well. So I deal with, I know, staying in the legal realm of things. So I'm able to deal with, because the joint custody, child support, simple divorces. I still in that arena as a mediator. But that was one of the things that kind of fueled me into pursuing my doctoral degree. And what you'll realize is that my doctoral degree specialization is conflict analysis and resolution. So that puts me in the space of contract negotiations and things. So it was always pretty strategic in terms of the track,
Makes sense.
the alternate track that I took. So which is, where I am today. So that was the whole piece. I was originally going to law school, and because the schools that I was applying to, it just wasn't something that could have been afforded at that time in terms of not being able to work. So yeah,
Did you
it's just
face
that.
any challenges while you're going through getting your PhD degree?
I would say, it's interesting. I've always been a bookworm. My mom didn't go to college. My
Mhm.
mom had 7 of us. And her thing was, I didn't go to school. Oh, but you're going to somebody's college. I may not have the money to send you. You're going to find the money to go and you're going to make it happen. So my mom would always go to, here we have the swap shop. She would go to the thrift stores. If there were books, we had them. We had encyclopedias. We had the Reader's Digest. And because I was the only
They don't
girl
make
for
those
so long,
anymore.
I still have them. I still have them at my mom's house. So my mom was super protective of me. So, she didn't allow me to go, play, get dirty and all that. So she'd always say, go read a book. My mom would get me dressed and the prettiest frilly dresses and, the jean tay and the powder, all that powder all over my neck and the frilly socks and, the hardback church shoes. And I would swear that I'm going somewhere. And you know what she would tell me? Go get a book. And so I would sit on the porch literally. So I would get dressed to read a book. Okay. So I would read encyclopedias and I would read the Reader's Digest. That's what I did in my free time. And so it got to, which actually helped me in my career, to be honest with you, with the track that I took, because it got to a point where there were very few topics that you can bring up that I didn't know something about. And it was all, thanks to my mom and that love for reading and always getting a book. So we had tons and tons we had like a library just full of books. So that was the thing. So when I think of the challenge that I faced in when I was pursuing my doctoral degree, to be honest with you, I actually completed the program in record speed. Actually,
Oh,
I
wow.
completed the coursework. Yeah, and I actually am proud to say I graduated with I think it was a 4.0 or 3.9, but it was a pretty high grade point average.
Impressive.
But here's the thing. I mean, I was a better graduate student than I was an undergrad student. So I'm not even sitting here and lie. I just learned better study habits. Okay, just figured it out better. What the interesting part was my dissertation. And the challenge with the dissertation is that you have your dissertation chair and then you have advisors.
Mhm.
And you're an avid reader, you're a writer, and you can take one paragraph and write it a million different ways.
Right.
Okay. So imagine turning in your work and you have 6 people to go over it. So you're having 6 different feedback. You got so that became a challenge for me. It's like, wait 1 second. Okay, who am I supposed to listen to here? So, and I could just remember, and I guess the worst part for me, what I would advise anyone that's going through their doctoral program now, as you're going through your coursework, think of your dissertation and start all of the assignments that you're actually given, your writing assignments, center that around whatever your dissertation will be. In hindsight, if I was doing the same thing, I would have completed my dissertation along with the coursework because it would have been more strategic. So although I was done with it, I still needed to complete this course, the writing part of it. And I would, it was one of those things I would go out with my friends or having dinner. Whenever I would think about that dissertation, it was like, damn it. It was like this big weight on my back. I had books in my car and everywhere I went, it was like, right. Anyway, so I would say the biggest challenge was being a little more strategic and just from that standpoint. But overall, it was I think I completed it maybe probably like 16 years ago, I think it was. So it's been some time, but I would say that going through the program, I was able to all of my life lessons and my study habits and reading habits and being a quick study and being knowledgeable about a range of topics, it really helped in that sense. But in terms of the challenge, I would say just completing that dissertation.
So I know that you got into the education space. If you could tell me a little bit of why you got into that space and tell me what was that experience like for you?
Okay, so here's the thing, right? Okay, I didn't go to school for education. My
That's
mom
why I
had a
asked.
friend. My mom had a friend. She was an administrator at one of the local schools, and she always thought that I was really great with kids. So I was always that. If you had a problem kid, I didn't look at them as a problem kid. I was like
Mhm.
the at risk kid, like whisperer. You bring the kid. I don't care how challenging they are. Trust me, the good doctor can get through to them. So she realized that was a gift that I had.
Mhm.
And at the time, to be quite honest, I was starting grad school. So the hours were good. The hours worked really well. And the pay wasn't bad either at the time. Okay. So being able to go through grad school, work as a teacher, and then having the summers off, at the time it was appealing to me. Right. And so I was like, okay, all right, I'll try it. I never applied for a position while I was teaching. Every school I was where I was, there was always another principal calling me to go to their school for a few reasons. One, I
High
was
demand.
great with the at-risk population,
Mm-hmm.
and two, I was bilingual, and three, I took initiative and I was like a natural leader. So that's how I got into the administrative track as well. And so my very first year of teaching, which was pretty depressing for me, my first year I taught fifth grade dropout prevention. And
Wow.
it literally broke my heart, because one of the things that most people aren't aware of, the reason why there's a big emphasis on third grade testing is because studies have proven that students that struggle, that don't master the art of reading by the third grade, they're identified as potential dropout prevention.
Oh,
They're
Jesus.
identified as students. And there's been some things that have been said that the amount of jail bed spaces that are put out there based on the third grade failure rate. So there's some correlation there. I've heard quite a bit, so I'm not too certain as far as that is concerned. Yeah. So if a student hasn't mastered the art of phonemic awareness, literacy, and things of that sort, by that time they will struggle. And so you'll notice that in most schools they have fourth and fifth grade dropout prevention. And so my very first year, that's the grade I taught. And what was sad to me was that it was September. I was the fifth teacher that those students had at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a room where I think I had like 16 kids, and I would go home crying every day because they came from broken homes.
Mm-hmm.
They were living with family members because they had been sexually assaulted, physically abused. They had, all sorts of challenges. And they couldn't understand, like, every teacher that went in there, they were gone within like days or weeks. They didn't even last weeks. And so I always try to be the person that I've always wanted for kids in my life or people in my life. And so I believe with children, they look at you the way you look at them. And so I had to find, okay, let's find what's gonna work with I used to call them my little munchkins. And so I just remember, like, early on, I just had to figure out, like, hey, you know what I would do? On Fridays, I'd go with my tennis shoes and my sweats, and that's the day we would play kickball and basketball together. I Every day, if they had a great day, they would get a hug. If they had a bad day, I wouldn't give them a hug.
Super
Not
influential.
realizing, not realizing, because there's a lot of studies that actually talk about the power of touch therapy. And so and it wasn't until one day there was this one little girl. She had a pretty rough day, and my class was at the front of the school. And those that had bad days, I would just shake their hands. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. And this little girl was so used to getting hugs from me. She literally paced outside of my classroom for an hour crying. And she said, I am not leaving until you hug me.
Wow.
And I said, I was very disappointed in you, and you didn't earn your hug, and I'm not hugging you. And mind you, I'm such a softie. I'm such a softie. My heart is breaking, but I'm like, I got to teach her a lesson, right? And she's like, I'm not leaving. She was just crying. I mean, like, real, like, teary crying. So finally, of course, I'm a wimp. I opened the door and I gave her. She said, I wasn't going to leave until you hugged me. I wasn't going to leave until you. And it was in that moment that I realized, damn, as adults, we can get through things. But if we're not giving our children a fighting chance, what are we setting them up for?
Right.
And a week turned into months. And the principal was like, what did you do differently with these kids? And they became the best. They were like the misfits. They became like the best kids at the school and everything else. And, I believed in order, and and there were times my kids would come to school and their stomachs were hurting. And they would say, I'm sick. It wasn't because they were sick. They were hungry. So then
Okay.
I learned to keep food. I would always have food for them in my office. I would always have like tons of snacks and everything else. And so it was really being able to see kids the way that I saw myself. And as a result of that, I developed this reputation of being like this at-risk specialist, this expert in dealing with, children with various challenges, like behavioral challenges and things of that sort. And so that's how it all started with me in education. So every school I was at, they were trying to pull me from the other school. And after the first year, I actually ended up leaving education because it was too painful. Every day I was going home and I was crying. I couldn't imagine seeing what these kids, thinking of what these kids were going home to. So left education, and then I was called back the following. I think, okay, I'm out, made a clean break. Then I get another call. No, we really want you back. And at this time, it was at the high school level, which is how the entire process started with me on my journey with education. I only planned on being there. And there's this thing about education: if you're not careful, you will become a lifer. Okay.
Mhm.
So I hope that, yeah. So that was my journey into the realm of education.
So I'm extremely passionate of giving back to kids in school, as I know my journey as an immigrant, coming from Jamaica, and what it was like to go through school in America. And I wanted to put together a program for kids to learn how to be resilient in school, and add some athletic pieces to that as well, as we've spoken about. I wanted you to maybe expound a little bit on, like, what do you think like a program like that would do for kids in school, um, as you've already been through that experience and seeing what it's like for kids?
That would be providing a program that would teach children how to be resilient in the face of adversity, or being able to thrive in their homes or their communities. It would be life altering. One of the key things that I found with our students, the kids that I actually had that I encountered, was that no child wakes up and decide I'm going to be bad, or I want to be a misfit, or I want to create problems. There's always something driving that child. There's hurt, there's pain, there's rejection, okay? There's abuse. And those are things that sometimes people are aware of, but sometimes they're not. And so my approach when I dealt with my students, my little munchkins, I love to call them, was that I would always get to the heart of who they were and what was driving them. So my thing was, whenever a student was sent to my office, I would always look at their panel. In their panel, it's the database that they use with all of the student records and attendance and notes and things of that sort. And so the first thing for me was, I would always look for a trend. Okay. For example, there was this one young man that in the school system, there's a progressive discipline plan. And basically what that means is that if a child goes to the office today, there's one, maybe a warning. The second time they go, so it becomes the consequence becomes progressive. And that was to bring, it's part of the matrix. It was the goal was to make it more objective in nature. But actually, in my opinion, it was still subjective. And this is why: a child can go to class and chew gum, and the teacher gives him a referral, him or her a referral. That child can go back the next day and not have a pencil. So now you have the child is on referral number 2.
Wow.
Then the child can go next week and have their head down. So now you're looking at a child with those simple infractions. Now they're deemed as habitually defiant in their records. And now the consequences that they endure are far greater than what they should have. Okay. So my approach was always to look at their history, look at patterns. And I remember this one student in my office, and because my approach was always to look at the total child. And that's what helped me in being able to reach my students and getting them to the other side of, being able to thrive better. And so I remember this one student, the teacher sent him on a referral, actually had security take this kid out of class. Security took this kid out of class,
Oh my God.
came to my office. And again, it goes back to listening. And the student was like, I said, what's going on? The referral said, well, he was sleeping in my class. He can sleep in your office, but I don't want him back in my class. So the moment I hear a child is sleeping, what I'm thinking is either there was some type of ruckus going on in the home the night before,
Hmm.
either this child is working, either this child is not feeling well, but there was something going on. So I always try to do my investigative piece, right? But
Right.
before he actually came to my office, I noticed his attendance was was pretty on point up until the third grade.
Hmm.
His grades started to decline, and then he had a high absentee
Right.
rate, the third grade. So in this third grade window, then I noticed there was a shift to another school and another area. So these are things that I would kind of use in terms of when I was dealing with my students. So the kid is in my office. So now I'm curious. what happened around this time frame? So the students of mine, I said, hey, I said, why are you sleeping in class? He said, my aunt gave me NyQuil. Ding, 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 ding. Aunt gave him NyQuil, not his mom, not his dad.
Right.
That's an indication that either the child is not in the home with his parents
Right.
or their extended family members in the household. It could have been either way, right? So I probed. I said, oh, I said, so she gave you the sleepy, snuffly, you know how the commercial goes. So
Right.
that was,
Right.
breaking the ice. And he was like, yes. I said, oh, okay. I said, oh, so your aunt. I said, that was really nice of her. I said, but guess what? That's going to make you sleep. He's like, yeah, I didn't realize. I said, so how's your mom? What is your mom? Well, how's your mom? And he's like, oh, my mom is dead.
Wow.
I said, okay. And I said, well, what about your dad? And, I kind of in a roundabout conversation, he said, oh, my dad is in prison for killing my mom in front of me when I
Wow.
was in the 3rd grade.
Wow.
Okay. So you see, I was curious about this time frame. I knew there was something traumatic, not necessarily traumatic, but there was a drastic change during this period. So now you have this kid and you see this full circle. So had the teacher taken just a second to ask this kid, why are you sleeping? What's going on? You don't feel, just probing a little bit more, but having security, that team, pick them up and drag them into the office. So so those are the steps that I would actually take in terms of getting to know my students and understanding how do I get through to them. And so a program teaching them how to deal with adversity and teaching them how to actually giving them the tools that they need to thrive in any environment. Because a lot of times, even as adults, we don't know how to process our feelings. And we base a lot of our decisions on assumptions from those feelings.
Correct.
Okay. So if you have a program where you're teaching students how to, one, identify what those challenges are in their lives, or identify the things that are, those adversities that they faced in their lives, and helping them to understand, I understand this happened, but it doesn't mean that that's the end for you. Now let's find a way to get you to the other side, because it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So teaching them how to use those same tools and resources, whether they're at home, whether they're in their community, to help them make better choices. Okay, and help them to have those coping mechanisms, those strategies to help them thrive. I think that would be a remarkable program that would have a lasting impact in the lives of our little munchkins. So.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. You are truly, truly making an impact with our kids. And I know you never even shared that story with me before. And I'm just blown away that you were able to like dissect that and find that like sometimes I think teachers don't get as much credit. And to go to that level and that degree shows how much you like truly, truly care about these kids. So wow. Wow. Um now so you share some amazing experiences, and I know that they had to have make an impact on you. So you decide that I'm going to leave this profession and now I'm going to step into the entrepreneurial space. Why did you do that when you're making such an impact in the school system?
Why? What I had to realize was that although I loved working with students, my purpose and destiny wasn't restricted to a classroom. It wasn't restricted as an administrator. It wasn't restricted to a particular profession. While I was there and I loved working with our students, but education wasn't my first calling. Although I was great at it, but it wasn't what was calling me. I still had this gnawing feeling that there was something more that I should be doing. I wasn't maximizing my potential. I was basically coasting through. And so my thing was, I love them, but there's so much more. I rather go in a position where I'm happy and aligned in my career, and I can go and give back in a much greater, at a much greater scale. So I was at a point where I just realized I never use, I'm not a person, how can I put it? I never used the word hate. Okay. Because I think it's a
Right.
pretty drastic, it's a pretty heavy word.
It is.
I literally woke one day, I left work, and I typically don't take naps during the day. I just remembered one day I went home and I slept. I went home and I didn't realize that I was just so exhausted and unhappy with where I was. And you ever have those dreams, those moments? I think some people that experience it, where you wake up and it's like maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you think you're late for work, and you're going and you're trying to hurry up and get ready, only to look at the clock and like, girl, stupid. Okay, it's only 5 p.m. Not that bad. Okay. So I had one of those moments. I went home, I was asleep. I just woke up. I'm like depressed, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And looking, and I said to myself, girl, you have to do something. I have those talks with myself,
We
because
all
no
do.
one's gonna tell
We
me.
all do.
I'm like, girl, listen, what's wrong with you? Get it together. Okay. Let's look at what's going on here. You're here, you're moping, you're not happy. And at the time, my job was killing me because I suffered from chronic migraines, where every day my migraines would get progressively worse to the
Mhm.
point my neurologist was like, you are going to have to leave. And I was like, hey, listen, I'm not independently wealthy and I don't have that luxury. I would get my migraines would start on Monday and every day would get progressively worse. By Saturday, it would get better. By Sunday, I was okay. And then Monday it would start all over again. I was unhappy. You have to listen to your body. I wasn't listening.
Definitely.
I knew that I was getting I was in my office where I literally had to turn off the lights and I would get these chills. Just the whole, if you've ever had one migraine, you never want to have another. Okay. And so I was dealing with this. I was getting like 25 migraines a month. It was unbelievable. I was thinking I was still consulting, not even realize what I was doing was consulting because I was always that go-to person. And I
Mhm.
was waiting for that great opportunity to finally say, okay, this is my time to leave. Okay. And so what ended up happening was it got to the point I couldn't take it anymore. And it was like, it's now or never. You don't have the nest egg that you were hoping for. It was at the height of the housing bubble. I purchased my house at the height of the crisis, not knowing any better. So financially, I'm thinking like, how in the hell am I going to make this work? Okay. And I'm figuring, my mom was dealing with some health challenges at the time. And I'm thinking like, what the hell am I going to do? And I'm not happy. Like there was more there. And I always think of, how can I put it? Failure to launch.
Mm.
Because so many of us in our lives, we've had dreams, we've had goals and aspirations that we actually put on the side, we put on the back burner because life happens. We don't move forward with the things that fuels us, that give us fire, that helps us to move forward because of what? Because of fear or because of
Fear.
different things that are going on in our lives. And I had to get to the point where failure to launch will no longer be the theme of my life. Okay. I was actually going to step up and figure it out and whatever in the hell that meant. And what that meant for me was leaving my job without a safety net, but knowing that there was a greater calling on my life than where I was. I had to get to a point where it's interesting. We pray and we always wait for like this loud noise, right? We think when God tells us what our next move will be, we think there's going to be this big theatrical moment, with the lights and the halo and everything else. And I kept waiting for that. But God had already spoken to me years ago, girl, that wasn't
Long
where you're
time.
supposed to be. You just decided to be comfortable in an uncomfortable comfortable in an uncomfortable space. You weren't maximizing your earning potential. I was even, how can I put it? I wasn't even using 20% of everything that I knew. Okay, what a huge disservice that was, not just to myself, but the people that I needed to impact with the gifts that God had blessed me with. So here goes. I had to make that decision. I did what I needed to do. And there's a whole story around that. And I ended up just taking that leap of faith. And I haven't looked back since. It's been 16, 17 years.
Mhm.
I haven't looked back. There's been those ebbs and flows. Sometimes they're great. Sometimes those challenges are there. But the gratification that I get from doing things on my terms, and there's no limit to where I can go and no limit to where I can grow, I wouldn't change it for the world. So that was my journey outside of education. I'm a huge mental health advocate. I love working with my Munchkins at-risk kids, and I still do that outside of that, my position as an educator. And so that's been my journey. And
So
that's been the journey.
as we get into like your journey, and I know that that led you into a business strategist, government contracting, and fancy vegan. I know that there was a pivotal moment that you just mentioned. I wanted to see how that correlated with some of your emotions, because at some particular point, right, you decided to make a decision to bet on yourself. Betting on yourself, there was a mindset shift. that went on for you. And for me, that also speaks towards you just said like, I'm going to be resilient and start living on that particular purpose. So if you could tell me what were some of like the emotional attachments that was tied to like your pivotal moment in your life to making that decision?
Well, the key thing is this: as I mentioned earlier, we tend to equate who we are with what we do. And when you have an esteemed position, some may call it, some may not, as an administrative behavior specialist, had a doctor, DR in front of my name, and had all these other opportunities. And people thinking like, are you crazy? Are you stupid? You're going to leave a known salary for an unknown financial future. Okay. And I had to get to the point. And the thing about me, once my mind is set on something, there's very little that can be said or done that's going to kind of veer me in another direction. Unless you come up with something that's damn good, that's actually going to give me pause, like, oh, damn, okay.
Absolutely.
And what ended up happening was I started applying for all these positions. And every position I applied for, I would get the famous, wow, you are talented. But, okay. And I remember a friend of mine told me about this position where they were looking for a COO of this organization. And she said, I'm only going to tell you this, though. They're intimidated with education. So what I did was, on my resume, I put my education all the way at the bottom. Okay. It must have been like on the third page of my resume, CV, whatever some may call it. And I remember I reviewed, I prepared for the interview. I had my best blazer on. I was dressed to the nine. I had the nice parchment paper. It wasn't even that flimsy printer paper. I mean, when I tell you, there was some nice stuff, okay? And I was confident. I'm like, this is my wheelhouse. Yo, I got this. It was a panel of about 7 to 8 people. There was the president of the company and there was a CFO. And then they had some other people that were there. And every question they were asking me, I was able to respond and elaborate in a way that I guess they thought was, by their estimation, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So then there was a question on, keep in mind my background, I'm an organizational development consultant.
Right.
My degree is in organizational leadership. So if I can't tell you about the breakdown in the systems and the structures and human capital in an organization, then I've in essence wasted money.
Correct.
Okay. So they're asking me all of these organizational like questions. And the very last question they asked me was like, what type of leader did I see myself as? And I went into transformational leader, and I also went into a servant leader, and I went into the different breakdown of all of that. Mind you, they had never looked at my resume, looked at the education part of the resume. The CFO, she was coming in the office, she was leaving, and there was a lot of friction going on. It's like some were paying attention to what I was saying, others weren't. So there was a lot of movement, and I'm sitting there. The whole time I'm sitting there, I'm like, you know what? Reggie, this is the last interview you will ever participate in. I said, girl, you would never sit in another interview again. You will never give anyone the opportunity to decide if they like the part that the side your hair is parted on. You will never give anyone else an opportunity to decide if you're worthy or if you're good enough for a position. And I remember walking out of there. I was just so deflated. I was hurt. I sat in my car, and the thing with me, when I shed a tear, that's when you get nervous. And I went in my car, and I remember I was in tears. And it wasn't because I felt, it was because of the finality of it all. I said I was never going to apply for another position again. No one will ever have that opportunity again. I'm going to go into the woods. I'm going to source my own wood. I'm going to build my own table. I'm going to get a whole damn chair, create my whole chair. Make sure it's pink, because I like the pink, right? Make it all pretty. I'm creating my own table. I'm creating my own table, building my table, and create enough seats so that I can impact the people around that look like me and give them a place at my table. So my mind shift was, no, you don't get to tell me if I'm worthy or not.
Right.
You don't get to validate my expertise. You don't get to validate me as a person. And that's the day that shift took place. That was the beginning of the change. And ironically enough, I used to sit on different boards, and one of their board members told me to tell the president that I knew him. And I decided not to because I just knew that I was going to get this position based on my merits.
Right.
Okay. And sometime later, I was giving I was brought in as a speaker to speak to senior level executives on the importance of strategic planning and all sorts of different things in their organization. And guess who was there? Honey, the CFO was there. Yes.
Full
The
circle.
CFO was there. Full circle. The CFO was there, and she approached me, and she said, because after the interview, she told the people in the room, she's great, but she's going to be even better a few years. No, she's great, but it seemed like someone may have given her the questions. But if they would have paid attention to my resume, they would have seen that you're asking me questions that's based on my entire background.
Right.
And so here it is. I'm at this event and I'm the speaker. Folks are coming up and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you were so phenomenal!" And of course, I'm like, "Yeah, I know." So she actually approached me, and she was like, "Wow, you're great." She said, I wanted to be able to sit down with you and talk to you about offering you a position." I said, "Quite honestly, you can hire my company as a consultant if you'd like. So I mean, you're more than welcome to schedule an appointment. We can, see what your needs are and develop a structure for you."
Bossing
And she
up.
looked at me. Listen, that was like one of the biggest moments for me. And then here it is. The president of the company happens to see me leaving a board meeting.
Right.
And he's like, "I didn't know that you knew these people." He's like, "Wow." He said, "I want to sit down with you." I said, "No, that's okay. I'm not interested." Because this is my thing. You don't deal with people based on who you think they are or who you think they know. You treat everyone with respect and what they bring to the table.
Exactly.
Okay. You dignify every person that comes into your presence and give them an opportunity to either show up or not show up. But you don't base that on something else where your power move or your flex or whatever the case may be. And so those were my full circle moments. And I just remember that was it. And I have not applied for anybody's positions. And God has been great to me. And I've had my fair share of challenges. And, being in business is not for the faint of heart. Yes, sometimes where things are great. Sometimes things are a little challenging. But guess what? I wouldn't trade it for the world. So that is the long and short, well, probably the long version of,
so
of how that whole started.
I love that one door closed, but the floodgates of doors open up after that moment. So I love that we never know like what these experiences are gonna teach us, but that lesson was so profound for you. And actually I love that you chose to bet on yourself. I truly believe that you've earned it. You know what I mean? You already know your self-worth. So I'm applauding you for doing that and not settling or saying like, oh, I should go back to teaching or something like that. So I love that.
I actually had to, and then to give credit to the people in my life. Sometimes we have people that believe in us so much more than we believe in ourselves. And sometimes we have people in our lives that can see our potential even much sooner than we're able to see it in ourselves. And I was blessed to have, my brother, my little brother. I beat him up sometimes. When I spoke to him about wanting to leave, and he said, "What are you waiting on? Just do it." And the fear of, what if I don't have enough money to meet my basic expenses? What if I don't do this? But then the moment the what if started kicking in, I looked at my brother. I'm like, "Yo, this dude really believes in me." And I remember after I submitted my leave, I remember my brother calling me. He's like, "Hey, I want to meet up with you right quick." I said, "Okay, cool." You know what he did?
What?
My brother, he wiped out his bank account and he said, "Here you go. Go make your dreams happen."
Bet on you.
And when you have that level of support, and I decided to bet on myself, and God just aligned things to happen in my life. And it was one of those things he doesn't like to get mushy. So I had to try not to cry. And I'm like, well, damn. So when I have those moments where sometimes I'm trying to figure out, like, because some days you feel like you have it all together. And then you have those other days like, what the hell am I doing? But when you have a support circle around you that continues to carry you, even when you're not able to carry yourself, in the sense of encouraging you and believing in you, it's allowed me to get through those hurdles within my business and within my life and with the challenges that actually, because life still happens even when you're a business owner, right?
True enough.
And being able to get to the point where I can honestly say that I wouldn't trade the path that I'm on, that I've taken, that I decided to take many years ago, despite the ebbs and the flows and the challenges, the ups and downs. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Amazing.
So here we are.
In addition to your brother, could you share with us any mentors that have helped you along the way? Also, any books that you have read that our listeners could use to impart in their lives?
It's interesting, right? I have a few mentors. I remember, it's one of those things, right? What I learned early on is you can't always wait for someone to seek you out. You can't always wait for someone to, the best things in sliced bread. I was very strategic early on. I had to identify, excuse me, those individuals that were doing exceptionally well in their respective areas that was near close to what I wanted to do. I started making calls. I started scheduling, hey, can I meet with you for a few minutes? Getting some insight from them in terms of what are they doing? How do they get into it? What are some of the positives, the challenges? And I remember, I don't even think he knows. I got to let him know this. I remember there was this one guy in particular. I was like, okay, I'd met him before. I said, he would be ideal for what it is, for where I'm going. And I remember I said, you know what? I need to, I went to an event and I saw him there and I said, okay, this is my moment, do or die. I spoke to him and he's like, hey, how are you doing? And I was bold. I kind of, straightened up my back and my heart was racing. And I said, hey, I'd really love to be able to sit down and talk to you about, this is a journey that I'm embarking on. I just wanted to be able to get some insight from you. And guess what? He said, sure, anything. We exchanged numbers and he became one of my best mentors to this day. Dr. Miller. And he was just one of this big guy out, just doing his thing and was able to impart so many great things in terms of wisdom and the importance of knowing my worth, knowing in terms of what I bring to the table, and understand that when you're when client alignment is really important. And he used to say all the time, all money isn't good money. So as a business owner, sometimes you're sitting there and you want to make sure that you're meeting your overhead and everything else, but understanding that not every opportunity is the best opportunity, and having that alignment is key, and being able to know your value and your worth and presenting that at the table every single time, and making sure that you never bargain for less than what you deserve. And as far as a good book, one of the books that I found to be quite a few, because I'm an avid reader, Lean In. Lean In was a book by Sheryl Sandberg. Some of you may know her from Facebook. And the Lean In was so important because it talked about how women should not be afraid to take risk and to always seek those challenges and to find out what makes you, what you're passionate about. Because I think a lot of times, especially for me, as a woman, when I was going into, these various boardrooms, there were always men. I was always like the only woman there. And sometimes having to fight for my voice to be heard. I would say, give input and no one hears me. And then the guy sitting next to me would regurgitate what I just said. And they're like, it's a great idea. So I had to learn what it was. But I had to learn what it was to stand tall and realize that I'm at the table for a reason. I bring something to the table just like anyone else, and to understand my worth and to be confident and trust my gut, right? You ever be a meet? You ever find yourself in like meetings or in spaces and you're thinking something and you don't say it, and the moment someone else says it and they're like, "Well, that's a great idea." I had to learn to stop second guessing and being able to stand tall, know that I deserve to be in every space that I find myself in, and also understanding that I don't have to do it alone. It's okay to reach out for help. It's okay to collaborate. It's okay to know when you need to find other people that understand your journey and they're willing to share with you their experiences and things of that sort. So it's allowed me to realize that being in my little silo, that's not, that there are other people out there that are just invested in your win as you are, and that are on a similar path, and they're looking for the sake for like-minded individuals to really help them to realize that when you find yourself in these places, it's okay to know that we do have sisters and brothers that actually they're there to their shoulders.
Love it, love it, love it. I always hear our mentor Spec reference your mentor already made all these mistakes already. So like they're like your blueprint. You know what I mean? That save you from all the mistakes that you could make on your journey on your destination. So I love that. And I love that you seeked this person out and they were in alignment with what you're trying to do. The next thing I want to say is that it's crazy how it takes certain situations for us to find our voice, and I love that you did that. Like, you put yourself in a room, you put yourself in a situation, you realize what it was, and you're like, "Nah, I deserve to be here." I love that.
And doing it scared,
Right.
you know, and
Exactly.
doing because you have to psych yourself. I had to like psych myself up. I deserve to be here. And there's that little evil voice like, girl, now come on now. Like, no, I deserve to be here. And it's standing there tall and it's like, yeah, and a firm handshake and looking them directly in the eye. Like, yes, I'm a woman that has a name, a boy's name, Reggie. Reggie deserves to sit at this table just like, let's go. What are we talking about? Let's make it happen.
Right. So, I wanna get into, your, profession here now. So, you're a business strategist. You're the founder and CEO of Fancy Vegan, and now you're getting into or you're already into the government contracting space. So, if you would, let's talk about the business strategist piece. What caused you to step into this space, and what has this experience been like for you with all of your potential clients and clients that you've already worked with?
Wow. The actually what's interesting is that like I mentioned early on, I never realized that I had such a gift for identifying issues and finding solutions in record time. So when I was in my doctoral program, the professor would also say, you should be a consultant. I'm thinking like, what is a consultant? Like, what exactly do they do? And how do they, excuse me, thrive? And I didn't realize that when I was small, my mom would come to me for advice, like a little kid. And people always would come to me to find solutions. So I was always that results driven, solution oriented person, even as a little child. And when I decided to step out and start my business as a consultant, as an organizational development consultant, that's when I realized that it was a gift. It was a gift that I'd actually taken for granted. Because one of the key things, there are so many professionals that are out there and so many professionals that are listening to this podcast today that are in a position where they know that they're not happy where they are. They know that there's something more that they should be doing and not understanding how do they even start the journey? How do they even get to that point? What I had to do was assess those things that I do exceptionally well, those things that came so naturally to me.
Right.
I had to be able to crystallize what those things were, develop a strategy around them, and how was I going to monetize those skill sets. And so that's where the whole business strategist part actually came into play. The thing that I did that I had to crystallize that I realized I did exceptionally well, I was very strategic with finding solutions. I was results oriented. I was the Olivia Pope of the business world. You come to me with an issue, give me a moment, and I will solve it. And so that's how that actually came to be. So in terms of my clients, I've worked with startup, mid-sized, Fortune 500 companies, and being able to help them look at their, identifying what their current state is versus where they want to be, and looking at those deficiency gaps, and I actually help them to develop those strategic solutions to help them thrive, whether it's employee productivity performance, whether it's increasing revenue, expanding, and things of that sort. So that's where that whole business strategist piece comes into play.
If you could, I know for some confidentiality reasons, but if you could share a story of a potential or a client that you've worked with before and how you helped them overcame some challenges that they face in their business.
Oh, absolutely. Let's see, confidential. Okay, there is a big district. I was able to. I had a superintendent that called me, and they were having some. They were getting to a point where they wanted to make sure that they were allocating their funds in the right area based on needs, and not just because, you know. Let me kind of back up. They were having some challenges in terms of how do they identify what the true needs were for each department within their organization, within their system.
Hmm.
And I was tasked with the the opportunity to go in and assess where they were and to identify those areas that were working exceptionally well and to identify those areas that they needed some that they could actually use some improvement. And I was able to also identify those areas that they didn't necessarily need. So how do we create a system that maximizes the opportunity while not marginalizing the quality of service delivery to their constituents or their consumers, and being able to do it in a way that helped the organization thrive from a performance standpoint, and also being able to do it in a way that was fiscally responsible, and they were then able to allocate the excess from what they were able to save in areas where those funds were needed on a greater scale.
I love it. You were able to help streamline this company. I know that brought tons of savings as they actually had your service with them. For somebody that's looking to get into this particular space that you're in, what advice would you give them?
For someone that's interested in getting into the consulting coaching space,
Mhm.
what I would advise them to do is to take an opportunity and think about those things that you do really well. Think about those things, those skills that you've mastered over the years of your employment, or over the years of things that everyone comes to you for. Okay? The thing that you can do in your sleep and you don't even look at it as work. Look at those opportunities. Think about, God, I do this really well. Everyone comes to me for. Obviously, there's a need if everyone is coming to you for it. So I would say to really sit in that, jot it down. What are those skill sets? Because a lot of times we forget these skills that we do have. A lot of, like, some of the things I'm sharing with you today, I completely forget about them unless I'm in conversation. Okay, so so being able to sit down and identify, what do you do really well? What are those things that come naturally to you? And being able to crystallize those things and come up with, okay, how do I come up with a strategy to be able to make money? And some of you, and it's not just about the money, right? It's about impact and what brings you the greatest gratification and things of that sort, right? But being able to find a way to, if you don't have the answer, find a mentor, a consultant, or a coach that have been on a similar path or a similar journey that can help you get from point A to point Z. So that's really important. So if you're that professional out there where you think that you've had this long-standing career, you're afraid to take that leap of faith, or you feel that because you've gained so much esteem from the position that you have, but you're still not happy, and you know that there's something greater that you should be doing out there, what I would say to you is bet on yourself and just do it. And
Thank you. I
seek
think
out those
that
individuals that have.
that speaks to the term ikigai, where you like find your purpose, and once you find your purpose, it'll bring you maximum joy in your life, and without you even thinking about it, actually, the finance will follow that as you pursue your purpose. Um, you are a big, big, big advocate for health, and you got into the fancy vegan space for your company. I want you to tell me, why did you get into plant based? Why did you get create the company Fancy Vegan? And yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. I come from a family of meat lovers. Okay. We're Haitian. They love it. If it's meat, they want it. Griot, the fried pork, the whole nine yards. I mean, listen, if it doesn't have some pork or an oink on it, they don't want it. But so as a child, I used to spend my summers in Haiti with my grandmother. And in the islands, it's very common to have other people helping you in the household. You have the nannies, and you have the chefs, and it's very common. And I remember I spent one summer, I think I was probably like 8 years old. And the entire, in the islands, especially in Haiti, everything is more organic. So we'd go out into the field, get, the fresh fruits, fresh
Yeah.
vegetables, the livestock, and whatever the case is. If it's out there, that's what you're having for dinner. And I remember I had a little friend. His name was Mr. Chickadee, because my grandmother didn't want me playing with anyone. And so my mom was super protective. And when I went with my grandmother, she was just as protective. So my only buddy that summer was Mr. Chickadee. Cute little chicken. He was my buddy. We would run, we would play,
This
we'd
was a
play
chicken,
peekaboo.
or a
Yes,
human.
honey,
It was-
it was a chicken.
Go ahead.
Chickadee was my buddy. We would play hide and go seek. I'm running, chickadee's running behind me. I chase chickadee, chickadee chase me the whole night. And so on this day, I don't know why that they decided that was the end of chickadee. They saw that we were buddies. I don't know why they would interfere with that friendship that we had. It was a love affair. That was my buddy. All of a sudden, it was they came, they took him, and they, cracked the head and got him ready for dinner, plucked him, and I was just I didn't realize at the time that I was traumatized by it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't eat it, wouldn't taste it, didn't want any parts of it. So fast forward, I come back to the States, and my mom's cooking dinner, and all of a sudden, I no longer want meat on my plate. My mom didn't quite understand, but she was like, okay. I was always a finicky eater. So if I didn't like it, my mom wouldn't force it, because I was that kid. I would politely leave the table and go to bed. I didn't have to eat. If I didn't like it, I wasn't eating it. And I'm just as finicky today. And so I remember still not realizing that this was a trauma that I'd experienced,
Right.
witnessing chickadee becoming dinner. And fast forward to college, I was in college. I was working. I had one of my good buddies, and my mom, whenever I'd go to work after school, after class, she would always make all this food, because my mom was always feeding everyone. And I remember it was, I don't know, whatever the meal, I think it was like chicken oxtail, whatever it was. And I remember I was eating with my friend, and I would always push the meat aside. And so I told my friend, I said, you know what? I said, I'm not eating meat anymore. I said, I barely eat it now. At the time, I completely stopped, and I haven't looked back since. And I didn't realize until I got older, because people ask me the question all the time, like, why did you stop eating meat? And it wasn't until like some time ago I realized it was the trauma that I experienced from witnessing chickadee becoming dinner. And so what I can honestly say on my journey, in terms I became a vegetarian initially, I was still 90% vegan at the time, and then I made the complete transition. And I could honestly say the migraines, to kind of go back to the migraines that I spoke about when I was actually working in the school system, my migraines went from 25 a month to maybe 3 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I
Right.
realized that when I started being more mindful of the things that I was eating, because the thing is, sometimes people make the transition from, they make the transition to plant-based and not realizing that, they overload on carbs because they don't know how to bring that balance with nutrition. And I actually have a program around that, to 7 days to plant-based, which is pretty cool. I'll share that with you a little bit more offline. And so I was able to figure out how to use food to help fuel my body in a healthy way, and how to use food in a way to therapeutically manage whatever health conditions individuals may have, that can help them either reduce or eliminate their dependency on medications. And so that was the whole piece around it. And so I realized when I would travel, I would always have to always try to figure out, how can I veganize the menu? So anytime I'm going to a restaurant, I always look at the menu ahead of time to see what can I adjust and things of that sort. And I remember going to, I think it was Colombia. I was in Colombia with my friend. No, I'm sorry. It was Puerto Rico. I was in Puerto Rico with my friend. And I just remembered there was this restaurant that she really wanted to go to. One of the locals recommended it. And there was nothing for me to eat. Nothing. I was like, well, can you make this instead of that? Nope. There was a lot of the stuff was sauteed in pork and things of that sort. And I just remember sitting there and stepping out, going to a local restaurant to see if I can find anything that was vegan friendly. Nothing. And earlier that day, we'd gone to this other spot that was probably about 20 minutes away. And I felt bad because I'm sitting there having dinner my friend is having dinner, and I'm sitting there drinking water. And it was in that moment that I realized, wait 1 second, I'm not the only person that's experiencing this. Like, why don't I obviously there's a void in the market space in terms of understanding what veganism is, and how restaurant establishments can actually create menus that can actually help increase their revenue, as opposed to having being more costly for them. It made me realize that even in my travels and fine dining, clothes, even in luxury items and things of that sort, there are ways that we can actually, adopt a plant-based healthy lifestyle that could be forego flavor. You don't have to forego the luxuries that you enjoy, but still being able to do it in a way that reduces our footprint and in an animal cruelty free way. And so that was that's how that actually came to be. That was the whole process behind Fancy Vegan. And one of my clients actually, Fortune 500 company, they're huge in the hospitality space. They they had this vegetarian menu. They had a menu that was vegetarian friendly. And so I went in as a consultant for them and was able to look at their menu. I said, do you realize that if you catered more to vegans, you would be able to cast a wider net, because vegetarians will eat vegan items, but vegans will not because of the dairy and byproducts of that sort. So when they were able to make those simple changes, those simple tweaks in their menus, they were able to see a noticeable increase in their revenue just by those little minor tweaks that they were able to make. And that's when I realized that I was onto something.
Wow, if you could.
So even like this nice thing that I'm wearing here, it's actually vegan friendly leather. So yeah, pleather.
Nice. If you could tell me, how have you gone about educating people in regards to like the plant-based method and the benefits of it?
One of the things that I've done, initially I started with my family. I'm that go-to for everything. And I have a family member that has hypertension, diabetes, and I was sharing with them some tweaks that they can actually, kind of implement in the way that they're eating and things of that sort, where they would be able to have a noticeable difference. No, correction. When my mom was here, my mom lived with me for 6 months, and I actually put her on a plant-based diet.
All right.
And I had her, I'm like, Mommy, just 30 minutes a day, 10 minutes intervals, just walk up and down the hall in the house. She did that 3 times a day. And I had her eat. She adopted a plant-based way of eating. And within 6 months, my mom was able to lose 75 pounds.
Wow.
She loved it. She enjoyed it. And it didn't even seem like it was something that, like a chore. She embraced it. And my mom this is coming from a lady that had restaurants most of her life.
All right.
Okay. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. On to something. So then I had my fast forward to my other family member dealing with hypertension, diabetes, and constantly calling me like, if I eat this, do you think this will help? What do you think? So then I was like, wait 1 second. I get these calls all the time. And there are so many people that are dealing with various health conditions. As we can see during the pandemic, a lot of the lives that were lost were mainly those that had various health conditions that were magnified by COVID. And it just placed something in my heart that if I was able to create a business model, a program model that will be able to help these individuals and prevent this from happening, then I think in essence I would have made it.
Right.
So there's a whole technology piece that I'm working on that we'll talk about it another time. But yeah, to really understand how to therapeutically manage their various health conditions through the way that they eat, and being mindful of how you can still enjoy great food and not have some flavor and so many other aspects of that. And that's been near and dear to my heart for a very long time. And I've been plant-based for over 25 years. And I could honestly say I don't have like major illnesses and things of that sort. No. And
What were
it's
some of
definitely
the
had me.
things that What were some of the things that you were cooking for your mom?
Initially with my mom, I eased her in as a pescatarian. So I
Hmm.
would make baked salmon for her. I would make her veggies. I would, sweet potato. A lot of times people think that sweet potato, because it's sweet, that it's not good for you,
Right.
but it actually is. And so I was, more or less having her snacks, her fruits, and understanding that, just because you're eating a ton of fruits doesn't mean that it's good for you either, because you have to look at the, complex carbs and things of that sort.
Right.
And so I was able to help her to, encourage her to increase her water intake. We would have, I would make her breakfast, and sometimes instead of the scrambled eggs, I'd make the scrambled tofu, okay, with the spinach and all this other good stuff. And she just enjoyed it. And instead of having, let's say, chicken, we were able to have, because keep in mind, like, what do you call it? Like mushrooms, like portobello mushrooms and oyster mushrooms. you can create so many different really cool meals with them. And so she started enjoying those. And before, okay, it's good. I'm good. And here's another one that I know that you'll be able to appreciate. You know, I know you're Jamaican, you love your ackee and saltfish. Okay. And in Haiti, our breakfast is saltfish and plantains, right? So what
Right.
I did was I substituted the saltfish with what do you call it? With jackfruit. So
Mm.
saute it really well and mixed it with the ackee and the whole nine, and she loved it. You know, the onions and the potato, the onions and the peppers and everything else and the spices and everything else. So being able just to show her the simple quick fixes that she can actually, little tweaks that we were able to make, and my mom was able to stick to it, and she was able to experience like just so much more energy, the weight loss. And honey, she was taking her pictures and she's like standing and posing and this and that, and I still look at some of those pictures today and it kind of makes me smile. But yeah, so just in
Nice.
those areas, they're able to notice some major changes and things of that sort. So yeah, just making some simple tweaks and just the way that we live, the way that we eat, our water intake and things of that sort. Believe it or not, you would notice be able to experience noticeable changes.
What are some misconception that there is out there on the plant-based diet?
That they have to forego taste, they have to forego flavor because everything is rubbery, and you know it's something that I can't get rid of cheese. Oh, I love some dairy. Oh my god! But keep in mind, dairy has an addictive agent in it that's by design. I don't want to get, that's a whole other situation. But if you keep in mind, it's something that's in, it's part of, and I don't want to seem like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. It's part of the agenda. Because if you look at every school across the country, what's the one item every student must have on their tray, whether it's breakfast or lunch? That carton of milk.
Carton of milk, yeah.
Okay. And you have the dairy industry that they fought very hard and they lobbied very hard to make sure that that is part of it. And it
Right.
does have an addictive agent. However, keep in mind, when you're looking at dairy, it creates a lot of congestion and it makes you mucousy, right? So it makes it easier for all of these various, you know, issues to kind of magnify in our bodies and manifest into so many different types of illnesses, conditions, or diseases, right? And understand this, when a woman is hormonal, isn't that when she produces milk?
Correct.
When she's breastfeeding?
Right.
So when you're consuming dairy, from a cow, the cow has to be hormonal, right?
Right.
And again, please, no one come and fight me. I don't need any hate mail, honey. I don't specialize, and I'm not a veterinarian. I don't know about all that stuff. I'm just telling you from my experience. Do your research, do your homework, and look into it and see how it can actually have an impact on not just your life, but the lives of your family members. I'm just telling you from my experience. I'm just kind of putting that disclaimer out there, okay? So, so that's the thing. So when I think of the myth, people are always talking, I can't get rid of dairy. I'm just so addicted to it. I can't get rid of it. But there are so many different dairy alternatives that are out there that are just as flavorful. I know when you're making that mac and cheese, you want the 10 pounds of cheese that you're putting in there. I love mac and cheese too. But guess what? Did you realize that you can actually use cashews to make cheese? And there
Oh,
you can
really?
add your seasoning, carrots. You can use carrot to give it the color, and you can use the cashews and so many different flavors and ingredients to it. Yes, yes. I really want to, in the near future, I really want to do like a plant-based sampler. And I only want the meat lovers to show up. Yeah. If you're a meat lover, I'm talking to you. Yeah. Okay. Really, really and truly help you to realize that there's this one guy. He's Papi Soleil on Instagram. He makes Haitians love griot. He makes a jackfruit, a griot that's made out of jackfruit that is so unbelievably delicious. You wouldn't even notice the difference. Okay. So follow him. He has some great recipes. He every now and again he's at different events and food is delicious. So in terms of, you know, things that you can do with oyster mushrooms, you can actually give it the consistency of fried chicken. If that's your flavor, put it in the air fryer, put the ingredients on it. You can actually give it a taste of seafood. There's so many different things that you can, and that's the thing. Once I will be including more recipes on my page to help the non-believers out there to realize, honey, I mean, I eat, although a picky eater, but doesn't like I'm missing any meals. 'Cause I'm eating some good food. Okay. So so if I can think, the food, the taste, they feel like they have to forego taste, they have to forego, they love luxury cars that have the, leather. Now you have these major manufacturers like Lexus, they have vegan leather in their cars. And I think Mercedes and some of the other big cars, big luxury cars, they're actually including vegan leather in their as far as in their luxury vehicles. And you have hotels now that are becoming more vegan friendly. So those are things. A lot of times people think that they have to forego so much in their life just to make the change. But let me tell you something, you make that change and you will add about 10 more years to your life. But keep in mind, let me kind of put this caveat. Just because you're having vegan chocolate cake and you're getting rid of dairy chocolate cake, garbage is still garbage out. Garbage in, garbage out. Just because you say, hey, I'm eating a vegan chocolate cake and I'm not eating the regular chocolate cake, it's still chocolate cake, honey. Just minus the milk. So just kind of keep that in mind. I mean, I'm actually going to do a whole piece on that. So those that are interested at some point, they can come and get some good resources and how to really and truly make some tweaks within their households and experience a noticeable difference. Add years to your life, take away the aging and just so many things, and then weight factor, your vital signs will improve, and just across the board. So yes.
I love that the industry actually now, based off like your experience in Puerto Rico, I've since eating out and things like that, you could tell that some of the restaurants, more so I would say like the high end type of restaurants, is adopting a vegan type of menu. What I want to ask you
There,
is this: there's so much benefits for you that you've shared in regards to like that transition and being plant based. How did that affect your business in regards to like how you operate with like your mindset, your motivation for business, and the outcomes of that for your potential for your lifestyle, actually?
for my lifestyle, I realized that I'm so much lighter. Don't have the brain fog. Brain fog. I realize I'm more centered, more balanced.
Hmm.
From a health perspective, my vitals are always near perfect, as my primary doctor would say. And it just allowed me just something more balanced about adopting a plant-based lifestyle, a whole food plant-based lifestyle makes a difference in terms of the things that I'm actually putting in my body. And what's interesting is that when you become more in tune with your body, you're able to identify the moment something foreign, right? So if I eat something and someone tried to sneak a little dairy in it, instantly I would know,
Right.
like instantly. And so just being able to understand when I have a headache, why am I having a headache? And keep in mind, sometimes people don't realize that we all have some level of food sensitivity, food allergies to some extent. Sometimes when you're not feeling well, you may feel lethargic or you're experiencing different allergies and things of that sort. A lot of times it's not what you ate today. It's something that you ate 2 days ago that's now manifesting in your body.
That's
So
right.
it gets a little more deep into it. So I don't want to take up a lot of time around that, but there's so much more involved in that process. And once you become more in tune with your body and understanding what you're putting in and how it impacts your allergies, your different conditions and diseases and your headaches and things of that sort, it makes a world of difference. And even just the clarity, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Thank you. So I've admired your ambition ever since I met you, and I study a good bit amount of around like the history of how women have gotten into business. And when you told me that you've yielded in excess of over $20 million in government contracting, and to see that you were able to do that in a space where it's highly dominated by men. When I looked into it, and to see that you come into space and you have been killing it. Tell me about your journey into government contracting. Why did you get into government contracting? And just tell us about the benefits of government contracting.
Ooh, good question. Here's the interesting thing about it, right? The power of networking, the power of social media. When I connect, there's this business owner that reached out. I'm sorry. there was this, someone reached out to me on social media, LinkedIn actually, and was like, hey, wanted to connect, whatever the case was, not necessarily knowing what their role was in their organization. But I remember it's been maybe like 15 years, I think. I think it's about 15 years. So let's fast forward. I get this call, and it was this person calls like, hey, we have a company that wants to partner with you on this upcoming government contract, on this upcoming bid. Had never heard of it before, wasn't, wasn't something that was on my radar. And I was certified at the time. I was a certified, I think state, local, and federally certified company. And they wanted to speak to me. I was like, well, let me think about it. I called one of my friends and I said, hey, I just got this call to partner on this project, this government contract. And she said, why aren't you doing it yourself? I was like, I've never done it before. She said, girl, do you realize how smart you are? She said, whatever you put your mind to, I know you'll kill it. And I said, oh, yeah, that's right. I'll kill it. Okay, got it. So I agree. I just need that little boost, right? So I agreed to speak to their executives. They had their VP call me. It was a call of like maybe about 8 of their team members. And I believe in operating in full transparency. And what I shared with them was, I'm thrilled about the opportunity, but I also wanted to be very transparent that I will be going after this contract, this bid as well. And they're like, we don't care. We just want you on our team. Oh, okay. And it was like it was a Fortune 500 company, publicly traded company, actually.
Right.
And at this point, the bid was due in like 2.5 days. I'm like, what the hell? I started looking through it. I'm like, what in the hell did I get myself into? But damn, okay, well, I got to figure this thing out. Went through it, became resourceful. I spent the next 2.5 days barely sleeping, writing this whole proposal and everything else. And what ended up happening the day of, typically when you have, every agency, they have their own, typically how they want every bid to be submitted. In this particular agency, they wanted 7 copies, 1 original. And on that day, I was going to have everything printed at Kinko's. I had a meeting that ran over, so I ended up having to print it. Listen, if you're in business, if you don't have a laser printer, be sure to invest in one. Made all the difference in the world for me. I had a laser printer. I was able to make, mind you, each packet was 300 pages.
Wow.
So I had to make, it was like 300 pages of 8 copies. I took the original off that had the signature and I put it in the printer to make the copies, obviously. And the bid was due at 2:00. I put everything in my hand. I'm rushing to the agency. And next thing you know, there was a long line. Security's taking its time, getting IDs. And I said, listen, at this point, it must have been like 1:55. I'm waiting. I'm kind of getting nervous. I said, listen, here's my ID. Do whatever it is you need to do, but I need to hurry and get this up there. So I ran up the stairs, cut everyone in line. Listen, at this point, I was desperate, right? With all the work I put into it. Made it up there. The stamp was at 2:00 on the dot. The way that it works with government contracting, if something is due at 2:00 and you turn it in at 1:00, it's no longer responsive. So they can't accept it.
Right.
And so turned it in, the whole 9. That's that. I was like, whew, gosh, got that out of the way. I get a call like a few days later. And the person said, are you sitting down? I said, no, why? Said, no, I think you need to sit down for this. I was like, why? I said, okay. And they were persistent about it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm sitting down. I was really standing. Well, who cares, right? So they said, guess what? Do you realize you made it to the top 3?
Wow.
There were like countless other individuals had actually applied for this bid, submitted their proposals. And I think I was like number 1 out of the top 3. And they said, however, we sent everything to legal and we are going to have to deem you unresponsive because you had a copy instead of the original for my signature. Yeah, keep in mind, whenever you're submitting government contracts, it's very particular, so you have to be very mindful. You need to check a box. If it's not checked, they can throw it out, the whole 9. And I was like, really? I said, damn. And the person, girl, did you hear what we just, it was a multi-million-dollar project.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, okay. And they're like, you're not upset? I said, listen, this is my first ever bid. I completed this. The bid had been out for like 60 days. I completed it in like 2 days, 2.5 days. I said, damn, that means I'm a bad girl. And I got like this boat of, I never even knew that it was a space for me.
Right.
Okay. I was like, well, damn. Then all of a sudden I started getting calls left and right. So now everyone, I never advertised for it because they would always refer people to me. I was like, whoa. And I started winning people contract. They started getting awarded $1 million here, $5 million here, 10. I was like, what the hell? And it's not even the sole source at the time of what I was doing. And so the lesson in that was this: because I was up against a bigger company, and better yet, because I was stepping into an area I had no idea. Because of the unknown, we get into that fear, that anxiety that kicks in. And
Right.
it took speaking to my friend to give me that vote of confidence. Like, girl, what the hell are you doing? You just do it and do it scared. I put everything that I had into it. I took a chance. I gave it my all. I tried it. I submitted it. And I even beat the company that had actually called me. Mind, that was a Fortune 500 company.
Correct.
I beat that company. They didn't even make the list. Okay. So it just taught me that sometimes you have to be flexible and be just as, how can I put it, courageous and confident in what you're doing. And even when you don't understand it, you still go after it and let the rest follow. So I stepped into an area I had no idea, but what actually worked in my favor was I'm very analytical. I'm a problem solver, and I was able to analyze and develop a strategy where that business strategist comes into place. I was able to review it all and come up with a strategy and positioned myself to actually win. So that's how that actually came into play. And all of my clients, when they come in, it's to the point where, hey, I can actually tell them if they're in a good position or not to be able to win the bid or the RFP, RFQ, whichever is at hand. But yeah, that's how I got into it. It was something that God had already ordained for me that I didn't even realize that I can do on my own. And it was one of those things where those skill sets, those business strategist, solution-oriented skill sets were transferable. And that's how the whole piece came into be, which also leads into my recent academy, GovCon Elite Academy, where I'm now teaching individuals how to position themselves to learn how to be their own strategists, their own gurus, because it's a pretty penny to retain my services. So you're better off coming into the academy so I can teach you how to do it on your own, and you're able to fish and build these massive, be able to 10x or 20x your company, because companies are able to grow exponentially through government contracts, state, local, and federal. And the key thing is before I even take on a client, it's always key for me to assess if the company has the capacity to bring on the demands of the company, of those projects. Because if you're a company that's used to making $300,000 a year, and now you're taking on this contract where you will be making $5 million, the systems and processes that you need for a 300,000 company are not they're not up to par for what you're going to need to operate a $5 million project. So being able to help individuals understand strategies, how to position themselves, and understand the contract negotiations and the compliance part of it, and how that all comes into play. That's how I actually got into the fold. And I've actually gotten to a point where I can honestly say that I am unequivocally an expert in that area based on the results that I've been able to secure for my clients.
So for a listener right now, what are some opportunities that are in the government contracting space that you could share?
There are quite a few, whether you're products, services, whether you're in the janitorial space, whether you're in the transportation space. There's a huge opportunities for transportation, hospitality, whether you have a restaurant, whether you have a brand that you want to get into, the concession part of getting into the airports, whether you provide a trade service, electrical, AC repair, across the board. If you have products and services, 9.5 out of 10 times the government is buying.
Okay.
So absolutely, there's so many different opportunities that exist. And then being able to help individuals quite a few times, what I notice is that companies will only select the codes that identically match to what it is they're doing. For example, if they provide janitorial services, they're only selecting the code for janitorial. But there are so many ways that you can diversify that puts you as one of the top competitors in the industry. So if you're interested, go ahead and hit me up on any of my social media platforms and just put government contracting. And actually, no, better yet, put Adversity Academy. And I'll know that you actually came from that you are one of the listeners from the Academy, and you'll actually get a discount. Yes. So it's definitely a space that moving from actually providing the one-on-ones to really being able to show people how to actually create their own opportunities and just kill it.
If you
Kill it in the
could
industry because there are.
tell me a little bit about some of the certifications in government contracting, and does that even matter for someone that's going after government contracts?
Yes, your certification. In some cases, yes. Most cases, yes. Because if you're going into a project that's DBE or ACDB certified, that certification is needed. Then you
Mhm.
want to have that in order to be able to, be able to take advantage of the set asides that are actually there. What do I mean by that? There's a even playing field that the government places out there for smaller companies. So that way, let's say if there's a $100 million project and there's like a 25% set aside for a minority-owned, minority woman business-owned enterprise company, minority women business enterprise certified company, it gives an opportunity so you are able to either partner on a joint venture or as a subcontractor, so that it positions you to be able to go after these contracts and potentially, let's say if you do it as a subcontractor, if the company wins and there's a 25% set aside for that particular project, then 25% if you're providing the services for that project, and that's earmarked towards you, to the services that you'll provide. And there's so many different ways to look at it that, with the short period of time that we have right now, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but yeah, it gets pretty intricate. But let me tell you something, there are so many opportunities that are out there, and just being able to understand the simplified part of it. A lot of times people hear government contracting, they get so overwhelmed.
Correct.
But I've been doing it for so long that I now have like this no stress, simplified strategy of how to get into position to really and truly win. Yes, so
Okay.
that's the whole
So like you've mastered business where you're now a chief business strategist, government contracting, fancy vegan, and fusion consulting. I want to know, how do you stay on the cutting edge with managing all three of these business and being always like at your tip top performance?
it comes with work. It comes with, you need a team. It's virtually impossible to scale a business without a team, and constantly looking for that right alignment. You may hire someone today that may not be a good fit for the direction you're taking your company. So being able to understand how to hire, not just based on where you are, but where you see the vision of your company going, right? Where your vision for the company is. So being able to understand that and constantly learning. I'm constantly learning, constantly making sure that I'm staying abreast of what's going on in the different industries. I'm a lifelong learner, and understanding that I have to create balance as well. So having these different businesses and realizing that I have to be mindful not to compromise quality for quantity or quantity for quality.
Right.
So being able to make sure that what I'm doing exceptionally well, and what I'm doing, that I'm putting my all into the product, services, and what I'm giving to my clients as well. So that becomes extremely important. So just having that balance. I realized early on that balance is key in everything that I do, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and even my relationship with my family, just having that balance. So I make sure I get up like 5 o'clock in the morning, I work out, make sure that I'm taking my meditating throughout the day, making sure that I'm not taking on more than I can handle, and knowing when I need to stop, recalibrate, and revisit what it is I'm working on.
So as we get ready to wrap up here, I know that you're a big time mental health advocate, and you're someone that has been through tons of adversities, tons of challenges. I wanted to know, how do you handle self care, and how do you handle like your own personal mental health?
Mental wellness is key. Knowing when I'm in a position or I'm in an environment that doesn't serve me or that doesn't feel right, I tend to just excuse myself from that environment or the situations, which is very key. Before, there was a time when I would just stay in places just to be nice or not to offend people. Now, my mental wellness is so far more important to me that I'm okay with not attending certain events. I'm okay Thank you for the invite. I appreciate being here and being okay leaving. I'm okay saying no now. No was very hard for me to say before because I'm that person that I'm always invited to everything and not wanting to disappoint. You're always wanting to show up and be present for everyone. Because being in business, a lot of times it takes away a lot of your free time. And so there's been times where I felt guilty that I couldn't attend certain events or for family and friends because everything was centered around work.
All right.
So then I realized that I had to create a balance in my life where I'm still showing up and being present for the people that I love and understand that time is one of the most valuable things that you can share with people. So now I learn to be more intentional with where I spend my time and who I spend my time with.
Love it.
And so that's been a way of me really having that balance. And I get to a point where after a certain time, I have my mental days for work. After a certain time on Fridays, don't even waste your time calling me. Unless it's a massive check in the afternoon, you're lucky if you get me after 10 a.m. When I get to the weekends, I try to make it it's a conscious effort that I make to completely disconnect from my work phone, my computer, and everything. And I revisit it on Monday. Sunday, I plan out, and Monday, I'm okay, we're back at it again. But I've gotten to a point where learning that all money isn't good money, learning to be
Facts.
more selective with my clients, okay, making sure that the client alignment is right and not realizing that every client isn't the best client. And so realizing that, and then I started working smarter. There was a time where I felt that I had to work 7 days a week, attend, 10 meetings a week, only to realize that no, I don't have to drive all over the Tri-County area. Let me be very strategic about those opportunities or those potential relationships that are aligned with where it is I'm going and how I can add value in the spaces that I'm in. So, and I've realized leading with adding value with the relationships that I'm forming or that I've formed over the years, it's actually served really well in the
Yes.
sense that I've been able to build these solid relationships where it's always like, what can I do for you? What are you working on? How can I help you? And the thing is, whenever I'm talking to people, it's always like an informal interview because I'm always listening to what their needs are, what their wheelhouse may be, right? And as I'm meeting people in conversation, oh, I can put you in contact with this person. It brings me the greatest joy being able to help people connect, collaborate, build relationships. And my thing is, I don't need anything in return. Just pay it forward to someone else. And I've realized that just leading with being of value, learning to put myself first, learning to that it's okay to put my oxygen mask on first when I'm on the flight, because I'm typically that person want to make sure that you're okay before I'm okay, but realizing that it's perfectly fine to put Reggie first. And it's okay to say no. I can't do it today.
Right.
Because what I was listening to something a few weeks ago. It says your yes is very expensive. Because for everything I say yes to, it takes me away from my purpose and my destiny. So when you
Facts.
are saying yes, make sure that it's a yes that has value and impact. So that's been my way of balancing my mental health, my mental wellness, my self care. And another great gratification to me is just being of service to other people. That brings me great joy. I love just seeing how the things that I can do can really have an impact in the lives of people, where I can make on what it is you're doing. That brings me a great deal of joy.
Wow. So we're at the end of the podcast. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation that we had. You brought so much value, delivered with so many actionable steps that people could take away from the show. I want you to, if you would, tell us how people could get in contact with you, how people could work with you, and then if you have any additional parting words, any life lessons that you want to share, I open up the floor to you to do that.
All right, for those of you that would like to get in contact with me, you can follow me on all social media platforms. I am Dr. Reggie, and well, you'll find tips, tricks, and different hacks that you can incorporate in your life. And I love to kind of put out the motivational pieces as well. And as far as I have an upcoming challenge on government contracting, so those of you that are really curious and want to learn more and be able to leave with some actionable things that you can put in place, then you definitely want to keep an eye out on my social media platforms for the upcoming challenge. It will be this month, so the dates should be coming up shortly, will be posted shortly. And as far as what if I can think of the key takeaways, the things that have been so instrumental in my life that have helped me at various points, various adversities that I've faced. It's always one, to be rooted in my faith and to always be graceful to other people and to understand that not everyone that you encounter, not everyone is out to get you. Some people are not operating at the full capacity to be able to assist. And when I was able to realize that you have to get to a point where you're able to meet people where they are, because sometimes we expect people to operate on a full tank. If your car is on E and it's stopped, it can't go anywhere. So that can't even move up the block. So being able to understand that, realizing that not everyone is operating at full capacity to be able to be present and show up in the way that you need and want them to. So giving them grace and understanding their journey and meeting them where they are and allowing yourself and being graceful with yourself. Because sometimes we get to a point where we become our worst critic and we're so hard on ourselves. And understand life will happen. You may have some of the greatest plans and they don't materialize, but you don't give up. You don't crawl up. You don't die. You get back up. You bet on yourself and remember who in the hell you are and remember whose you are and you keep it moving. And those are the key things. And then I would really and truly impart on the people that are listening today, whether you're in a career, whether you have a job, or whether you're sitting there trying to figure out what the hell your next step may be. Stop and sit in those feelings and identify why you're feeling the way that you are. And then think about those things that you do so well that no one else can compete with you. And you go out and you offer that into the marketplace. And for those of you, whether you're a startup, you want to realize how do you grow your company exponentially? Go ahead and hit me up on the I am Dr. Reggie, and we'll talk about how we can get you to that next level and take it from there. So, those are all of the things that I can think when you think about impact, inspire, and empower, whether the core tenets of Adversity Academy, how to find a way to make it through despite whatever challenges you're facing, and understanding that there's always light on the other side if you just don't give up and don't hesitate to ask for help when you need it. So those are the key things that I would want to impart on all of you. There's quite a few more, but I think I'm going to stop there so I don't take too much of Michael's time here. But I'm so proud of you and all that you're doing, and the fact that you had this vision and you decided to go all in and to help the masses to understand what it is to participate in their own rescue and overcoming adversity and being able to get to a point where their stories can inspire and empower others that are out there. Your story is not your own. Figure out what your testimony is. And that's what you share with the world, because other people need to hear that. There are so many people out there right now that are losing hope. Their faith is minimal and they need hope. And how dare you hold on to your story, your testimony, and deprive them of their rescue. So on that note, I'm Dr. Reggie. I love you, Michael. You're my brother. I'm so proud of you. I look forward to all of the great things that are to come with you through this purpose, through this vessel that you're using to impact the masses. And I told you before that this is a global movement, and I really and truly look forward to just having a front seat and just witnessing it. And you know your big sis got you, however you need me to be.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reggie. I love you too. You're about to get me emotional here, man. You've been my sister, rocking with me, supporting me, keeping me accountable in regards to my mission and my purpose. You know that me stepping out and doing things out of my comfort zone has actually bring me into another space, and I'm actually like enjoying it and I'm loving it. And I just think that the support that you're giving me is totally encouraging for me to come out here and make an impact with people through my story, and just creating this platform too, for people to come on here and just let this world know that other people are going through some stuff too, and they're getting through it. You're not the only one. Other people are getting through some things too. Life happens, and we just keep on moving, and we just are resilient. What I want everyone to know as we are listening to this, you heard Dr. Reggie's story, you heard her transformation. There's more to come as me and her will be working together on some more things on this podcast. As you could tell, that she's totally, totally intellectual. She has tons of knowledge, tons of experience that I think she could bring to this platform too as well. So, as we get ready to get out of here, I am your host, Michael Allison. Thank you, Dr. Reggie, for stopping by. You can follow her at I am Dr. Reggie on all social media platforms. Until next time, guys, we air episodes every Friday. We love you. Peace.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.